The US national debt crosses over $33 trillion for the first time in the history ever. The US has added over $240 billion in the first week of October 2023 itself. So guys, this interesting case study is completely based around the impact of rise of US debt and the impact on the crypto and the Web3 economy. So this case study has three interesting parts. The first, I'm going to highlight some interesting statistics about the US debt. Second, I'm going to talk about some advantages and disadvantages of the rise of debt. And number three, the impact of US debt on the Web3 and the crypto industries. So guys, let's find out. So US is adding on debt just to make sure and cover its interest payments. So analysts and economists predicts that if this rises up significantly, the US is going to pay over $1.3 trillion in interest payments alone in the next decade. While some economists argue that this rise in debt is good because the US government is spending a lot of money on infrastructure, while most of them also argue that it would be bad for future generations because the US government doesn't have any additional sources of revenue. And this is for the first time ever that US budget is also gone into deficit. So what is deficit? Deficit occurs when the government spending is more than their realization from taxes and other revenue sources. So which potentially means that the US is basically just printing money to pay interest payments. Also, Finch, which is one of the most credible rating industries, has also downgraded US securities and US bonds from AAA to AA+. This also has led to a lot of investors speculating about the future potential of US economy. So this could also cause bank run on the US economy because 30% of its debt is owned by foreign investors and sovereign countries like India, China, Europe and a lot of other countries. So which is around $7.4 trillion of US debt and treasury bill owned by foreign countries, while 70% is owned by US domestic investors. But US domestic investors are also in the panic mode because the government has officially started to print money just to pay interest, which means that there is a lot of political instability in the US because US introduced a very controversial bill, which was US debt ceiling bill. While this bill is controversial, the key important thing to note here is that the US debt per capita is over $98,000. So you can derive at the US debt per capita by dividing the total GDP of the US by its population. Now, I'm going to talk about the four main causes of national debt. There are four main causes of rise in national debt. Number one, increase in the interest rate. Number two is inflation and decrease in savings. Number three is that lack of flexibility. And number four is that the risk for new financial crisis. So guys, just let me give you like a quick summary of these important causes. So since the US has reached an inflation of over 6%, which means that the US inflation has essentially went out of control because in 2020 US government printed more money to save their economy during the COVID crisis, so which has led to influx and abundance availability of capital. While in 2020 the interest rates were very low, it encouraged consumers to borrow more money and spend more money. Also, the US companies and the financial institutions also went on aggressive spending by promoting a lot of interesting schemes for consumers to spend money, such as on mortgages and things like that. While the cost of capital was significantly low in 2020, it has risen significantly in 2023. Today, the US Treasury bills pays in the range of 6 to 8%, which is attractive enough for investors to hold on to US Treasury bonds. While this phenomena is bad for the economy because this essentially leads to fall in the prices of US bonds, and this has triggered to bankruptcy of several major financial institutions in the US. This year we saw Silicon Valley Bank, which was one of the most reputed financial institutions in the US, collapse, and there were other 50 plus banking institutions institutions which essentially collapsed. Why? Because banks consider US Treasury bonds to be a safe investment, but when there is a rise in interest rate, the price of these bonds in the market essentially falls. Because most of these trades happen over OTC, there is lack of liquidity or lack of transparency in the bid and ask price of these bonds, because this entire market is controlled by the financial institutions. So the fall in the bond prices have caused several bankruptcies because of the fact that these bonds were bought at a higher price when the interest rates were low, because these interest rates are inversely correlated to the prices of bonds. Also, as per statistics, over 80% households in the US are living from paycheck to paycheck, which means that they don't have any additional disposable income and also no additional savings to meet any financial emergencies. So which brings me to a very interesting point of US debt ceiling bill. So this particular bill highlights that the US government can print more money without issuing any securities such as treasury bonds or any such instrument. And while traditionally there is no such way to do that, the US Congress has specifically asked the Federal Reserve to figure out a way to print more money but without issuing any securities. So guys, this is something which is absolutely crazy, and looking at these things, my mind is definitely blown away, because the entire world considers US dollars to be like a safe haven. So guys, this brings me to the final part of this interesting case study. There are a lot of thoughts for takeaways. Number one, can printing of more money could potentially cause bank run on the US economy? The answer is absolutely yes. This has happened in 1970s when President Nixon announced that the US dollar is no longer backed by gold. So all the countries around the world ran to the US banks and wanted to redeem their dollar or bonds against gold. The US, obviously being US, denied that they are like temporarily announcing the convertibility of dollars to gold, and that temporary conversion still exists today. So with the pass of the new treasury bills and the government looking out for ways to print more money but without issuing any instruments against it, could also potentially cause bank run on the US economy, and this could lead to massive financial crisis beyond our imagination, because a lot of countries around the world will lose money. So this is a very risky time, for the first time in history, where the governments and all the investors need to think about where to put in money, because the US bonds were downgraded from AAA to just AA plus, and the chances are that it might get downgraded further again. Now, there are other side of economists who argue that the rise in US debt fueled by spending and consumption, which is cautious, can also give boost to the economy. There are some countries globally like Japan, Greece, whose debt to national GDP is over 200%, and Japan has not faced any major financial crisis because of this. So some economies believe that the US government needs to be very cautious, and the rise in national debt could also potentially boost the economy. Now, the ultimate question: what is the fate of the Web3 and the crypto industries? What is the fate of end consumers like us? What is the fate of investors? And also, what is the fate of the smaller or the weaker sections of the society? So guys, we are definitely in a very interesting landscape. We really need to understand and know and have knowledge that how crypto and Web3 could potentially be beneficial, because crypto and Web3 are giving powers to the community to build their own infrastructure, to build their own financial infrastructure, use cases and freedom without any dependencies on any of these centralized institutions. So for example, BRICS announced the launch of gold-backed currency, which can essentially help ditching US dollar. So a lot of countries around the world are taking such initiatives, and also looking at the African economy, a lot of people have become rich because they can use their computer and infrastructure to get access to global asset classes such as cryptocurrencies. So guys, this has been like a very interesting topic, and thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to see you in next one. Bye bye.